مشاهدينا في كل مكان، أهلا بيكم. احنا معاكم النهاردة هنستكمل حوارنا مع سعادة السفير أجيت كوبتي، سفير جمهورية الهند لدى جمهورية مصر العربية. هنتكلم النهاردة عن العلاقات المصرية الهندية، فتابعونا وهذا اللقاء.
Engineering sector has also done well. So we are now trying to focus on new emerging sectors like electric vehicles, EVs, green hydrogen, battery storage, etc. India has truly a lot to offer to the world. It is very, very difficult to explain in a short span of time, but let me try. As I said, we have the entire Himalayan range in the north where people can do trekking, mountaineering, skiing, adventure sports. We have the mighty rivers like Ganges where they can do river rafting. So there are a lot of adventure sports which people can do. You can see we now have a woman as the President of India. We have many women in our cabinet. Women have shown in the corporate sector in India. Some of the largest companies in India have been established.
مشاهدينا في كل مكان، بيسعدنا نستكمل حوارنا مع سعادة السفير أجيت كوبتي، سفير جمهورية الهند لدى جمهورية مصر العربية. Your Excellency, thank you so much for having us for the second time to continue our talking about the Egyptian-Indian relations.
It's a pleasure for me to be here again, once again for your next episode.
Your Excellency, at the beginning, we would like, of course, to know more about the historical background of the Egyptian-Indian relations.
Well, you see, if you go back 4,000 years ago, 4,500 years ago, there were only 5 ancient civilizations, and Egypt and India were 2 of those civilizations. So our contacts go back more than 4,000 years. In fact, we have evidence in the western coast of Gujarat of some artifacts which were brought from Egypt 4,000 years ago, and this is something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi stated during the historic visit of President Sisi to India in January 2023. So for thousands of years we've had interaction between India and Egypt. It is said that the mummies where they used some oils brought from India to preserve the mummies, you know. Similarly, cloves were kept in the nostrils of the mummies and cloves at that time were only grown in India. But certainly over the centuries we've had interaction. In the 20th century there was a close friendship between Mahatma Gandhi and Saad Zaghloul, and in fact Mahatma Gandhi had stopped over in the Suez Canal on the way to the round table. He was not allowed to disembark. In recent years, in the 1950s, there was a very special friendship between President Gamal Abdel Nasser and Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. In fact, both countries signed a friendship treaty in 1955, and together with Yugoslavia, we established a non-aligned movement in 1981. Now, the high-level contacts have continued in the decades, but particularly since 2014, we see a new rejuvenation of the relationship. President Sisi and Prime Minister Modi came to power at the same time in 2014. Last year in January, President Sisi was invited as the chief guest for our Republic Day parade. This was the first time ever that this honor was extended to an Egyptian president. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Egypt in June 2023, and President Sisi again went to India in September. So it is very, very rare indeed that in a span of 9 months, we've had 3 high-level visits between the leaders of 2 countries.
And of course, this adds more addition to the historical relations that we have been talking about since 400 years, as Your Excellency mentioned.
4,000 years.
4,000 years, yes, I said sorry, 4,000 years, as Your Excellency mentioned. Please, can you tell us more? Let's talk in a little bit details about the cooperations between the 2 countries.
Certainly.
So let's start by, for example, in the field of tourism. For example, India, Egypt are both are tourist destinations, public important tourism destination. So is there any kind of cooperation in this field between the 2 countries?
Well, there is, but I think there should be much more. You see, everybody in India knows about Egypt. even in the villages and in rural areas, people have read about Egypt. They are aware of the pyramids and the Sphinx. Now, thanks to the 2 high-level visits last year, there is great awareness in India about Egypt, and Egypt remains, I think, an unexplored destination for many Indians. About 160,000 Indian tourists visited Egypt in 2022, but I think this number can go up. Now, I see more and more Indian travel agents promoting Egypt and organizing travel tours for Indians to visit Egypt. We have over last year started direct flight connectivity between Cairo and Mumbai, and also from September between Cairo and New Delhi. So I also do hope that more Egyptians will visit India.
And what can we say about the field of health? What kind of cooperation there is between the 2 countries in this field?
There is again some very strong cooperation. You will be surprised to know that about 70% of the vaccines which are delivered in Egypt come from India. So the vaccines for diseases like tuberculosis, MMR, diphtheria, tetanus, etc., they are all coming from India. I am now delighted to announce that there is a cooperation program between the 2 countries where the vaccines will also be co-produced in Egypt instead of only being supplied, and some new vaccines are being developed. Similarly, during the COVID-19 pandemic, India had dispatched 50,000 doses of COVID vaccines for Egypt. When we had the Delta wave, we had sourced about 300,000 doses of remdesivir from Egypt, and Egypt had also sent 3 aircrafts with aid for India. India is also one of the very significant suppliers of APIs, which are an essential ingredient for making medicines and pharmaceuticals. So there is good cooperation between the 2 countries.
The education field, is there any scholarship between India and Egypt in this field for the student, of course?
You see, India has had a program of providing scholarships to students from all over the world for many decades, and I'm happy to tell you that more than 1,600 Egyptian officials, scholars, professors and teachers have availed of these scholarships. In addition, we are also running training courses. Last year in August, we had trained the young diplomats from Egypt. This is an area where we are looking at consolidating up a training center at the Al-Azhar Institute. We've set up a computer IT lab which has provided training to more than 1,500 Egyptians. Now recently we've done some tie-ups in higher education, and I'm happy to say that one of the Egyptian universities has started courses from last year in areas like machine learning, robotics, artificial intelligence, etc.
India and Egypt, they were both an agriculture countries. So is there any cooperation in this field?
Yes.
Agriculture or the agricultural science?
Yes. So you see, there is a lot of trade in agricultural produce, because Egypt, because it is primarily desert and you have a shortage of water, while India does have more water, so, and we produce a lot. So we are the largest supplier of items like rice, also buffalo meat, beef, and we have also started supplying wheat, and there are other commodities which we are supplying. We also have close cooperation between the agricultural research institutes in India and in Egypt. And recently, one of our Indian companies has set up a demonstration project to use solar panels to extract groundwater at the ASRT in Cairo.
All the speaking about the health, agriculture, and all the things that we talked about, makes me think about what is the volume of investment do we have in between the two countries?
You'll be surprised to know.
Is there any investment really or no?
Yeah, there is. In fact, I was also very pleasantly surprised when I came to Egypt that there is a very large amount of Indian investment, mainly in manufacturing facilities. Indian companies have set up large factories with a total investment of about $3.4 billion US, These are mainly in the ranges of say petrochemicals, adhesives, items like paint, ready-made garments, some in pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth. I'm also very happy to say that in 2022, 3 large Indian renewable energy companies signed MOUs with a proposed investment of $18 billion to develop green hydrogen facilities in Egypt.
That's very good. And what about trading volume?
Yes.
And of course, when I talk about the trading volume, I would like to know some things about the most important import and export products in between the two countries.
So, Egypt is one of the most important trading partners for India within Africa. Our trade was about $4.5 billion, but in 2021-22, it increased by 75% to reach a level of $7.26 billion. I am happy to say that the trade was reasonably balanced. From India, the main items are, like beef, rice on the agricultural side, but we also export a lot of items which are used by Egypt. So, for example, we send textiles which are made into garments over here and exported, APIs, which go into the pharmaceutical industry. From Egypt, we are getting some crude oil which is refined in India and sent back, natural gas, rock phosphate, which is essential for our fertilizer industries, and also a lot of oranges. A lot of citrus fruits from Egypt, which are very popular in India.
Your Excellency, I would like also to talk about the cultural cooperation between the two countries, how it looks like, because we can see some similarities between the Indian and Egyptian citizens or people. So how do you describe the cultural relations in between the two countries?
See, we were discussing that Bollywood has fascinated the people in Egypt of all ages and at all societal levels for decades. So what I found here very interesting in my assignment was that Egyptians were really very interested and also deeply impacted by Bollywood and exposure to Indian culture. So we had set up in 1981 an Indian Cultural Center in Cairo, and it is doing very well. They organize classes in classical Indian dance, music, Hindi, Urdu, and recently they have been, we've started yoga classes which are becoming very, very popular. I believe yoga is spreading like wildfire in Egypt in terms of popularity. So the cultural connect is very strong. There are cultural troops from Egypt which visit India and from India which visit Egypt.
So since you have been here for almost 3 years in Egypt, so for sure you have been around and you saw some tourist places. So which place that really makes you feel, oh, this is something special? What do you think about the tourist places in Egypt and attractions?
You see, what I think we found very unique and impressive about Egypt is the ancient civilization, because I think nowhere else in the world can you see something which is 4,500 years old like the pyramids, and it is so large, it is so impressive, the Sphinx. And then for the first time when we went to Luxor and then to Aswan and Abu Simbel, we were absolutely thunderstruck. We went as a family, because again what you are seeing in Luxor you cannot see anywhere else in the world. You are seeing things which are 3,500 years old. The temple of Karnak, the temple of Luxor, it's largely intact, 60-70% intact. The temple of Madinat Habu, you can still look up and see the part of the paint which was there, the colors which was there more than 3,000 years ago, and the value of the kings and the value of the queens. So it is something which I have gone to on several occasions, but it's a memory which we will carry throughout our life. Similarly, I have had the good fortune of visiting many of the seaside resorts, Sharm el-Sheikh, Hurghada, on the Mediterranean coast, and I must say that I have done some snorkeling, I have done some scuba diving, and it's the coral is very good.
What is your favorite place spot in Egypt?
Well, on the civilization side, I would say Luxor and Aswan. Both are very, very interesting. The Philae Temple, for example. And this is something which attracts the Indian tourists also. And your seaside resorts are also very good. The Sharm el Sheikh is a favorite. Hurghada is also a favorite.
When you talk about Luxor and Abu Simbel and Abu Simbel especially, did you see, Your Excellency, the sound and light program they make on this ancient places?
I have seen the sound and light show both in Luxor on I think 3 occasions, and also at the Philae Temple. And the manner in which the Philae Temple and Abu Simbel were relocated in the 1960s is also very, very interesting. You know, they were cut into pieces and relocated to a higher place. So it's very interesting. And
also Abu Simbel, because they had to make calculation to have the sun rise in certain days on the face of Ramses. So of course this was the hard thing they made with technology, although it have been done 300 years ago without anything like this.
Actually, I'll tell you something very interesting, is that there is a lot of similarity between the pharaonic temples and the practices and Hindu temples. So like even today in India, we worship gods and goddesses. So we have a god of knowledge, we have a goddess of wealth, we have a god of creation, we have a goddess of learning, which the children pray to before the exams. And during the pharaonic times also you had similar gods. You have Isis, Horus, Hathor, etc. And similarly in the layout of the temples, it's very similar to the Hindu temples, because during the pharaonic times also the gods and goddesses were in a small chamber inside. They were bathed every day with milk, honey, buttermilk, etc. Then you had a small chamber outside and a bigger chamber outside. So this practice we still follow in India. And you would see that on many of the, in fact almost all your temples and tombs, one of the main thing is that the pharaoh is offering blessing, offering flowers or incense to the gods, and the gods are blessing the pharaoh like this. And this, even now in India, if you go to a temple, you will see that all the gods are blessing people like this. So there is this great similarity between the pharaonic practices and Hinduism.
I would like really to know, what do you think about the Egyptian cuisine, and what did you try from the Egyptian cuisine and you like it? And if there is any similarity between the Egyptian cuisine and the Indian one or no?
Yes, well, some of the dishes, for example, koshiari is supposed to have come from India. We have khichdi, which is very similar, except that in koshiari you use some macaroni, so there is some variation, but koshiari is very similar. And I really like Indian food. The bread is very good. It's similar to our naan, but I like the dishes here, which are hummus, baba ganoush, tahini, the starters, falafel, fattoush salad.
Fattoush not Egyptian, but but falafel, yes, of course, yes, of course.
And of course you have a good variety of kebabs, and in the desserts you have baklava and omali. So we like Egyptian food very much.
We also have an international cuisine with our cuisine, that's for sure. Your Excellency, thank you so much for second time, for your time that you gave to us and all the information that you have been telling us about the Egyptian and Indian relations. So thank you so much for second time, and pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much for having me.
كده مشاهدينا في كل مكان، انتهى لقائنا مع سعادة السفير، سفير جمهورية الهند لدى جمهورية مصر العربية، سعادة السفير أجيت جوبتي. تحدثنا على مدار حلقتين مع سعادة السفير عن الهند كدولة والطبيعة الجغرافية الخاصة بيها، بالإضافة لأبرز الصناعات الموجودة في الهند، سواء كانت صناعات يدوية أو كانت صناعات نقدر نقول إنها اجتاحت العالم كله. تحدثنا عن العادات والتقاليد الهندية، تحدثنا أيضا في الحلقة الثانية عن العلاقات المصرية الهندية في القطاع الخاص بالصحة والتعليم والسياحة. بالتأكيد حاولنا ان احنا نلم بكل هذه الجوانب في الإطار الخاص بالحلقتين. بتمنى ان تكونوا استفدتوا من كل المعلومات اللي احنا اتحناها لكم من خلال هذه اللقاءات، وبشكركم جدا على حسن متابعتكم، وإلى اللقاء.